we're going to talk about our growth tonight. Is our growth really exploding, or are we growing just consistently? And we'll talk about that tonight. The second thing we want to talk about is RTA Next. We want to talk about how important that is to our community at large, but how important it truly is to the town of Marana. And so we're going to cover that for you tonight. And then we're going to talk about data centers. We're going to talk about those and what those look like if we were to get an application for one in our town. Right now we don't have an application for one, but we think there are probably going to be one on the horizon. And so we want to get out into the community and share what that looks like to the community. You know, we want to be able to discuss that with our residents before a room full of people come at us and there's no more discussion, as you probably noticed what happened in the city of Tucson. So without any further ado, I want to turn it over to our town manager, Terry Rosamond.
All right. Well, I gotta say, I love the turnout. I can't tell you how many times we've had community meetings and the staff from the town outnumber the residents that are sitting. So we've done these where there's 8-10 staff members and 4 residents, and so this is a great showing. We had a great showing at the Mark a few weeks ago. I'm going to start out here just kind of covering some housekeeping stuff. Restrooms are right out through those doors, and to the left you can come back in through those same doors. They won't lock behind you, so you're okay there. We are going to cover, as the mayor said, 3 topics tonight, and we highly underestimated how long this was going to take the first time around. We said like an hour and 15 minutes, and we were there for 2 hours. We'll try to do it in an hour and a half. That'll be kind of our goal, but a lot of that will be dependent on you folks here and how many questions you have and the things that that are on your hearts and minds that you want to talk with us about here tonight. But the presentation portions of it, we're going to try and keep each one of them to about 15 to 20 minutes with an opportunity for questions. The way we're going to do questions is we're going to have these little cards, and does somebody have one of the cards? Maybe there's one up here. No. We have these little cards. See, some of you have them. There you go. So you got these little cards here. You can write your questions as we go along. Write your questions out. When you have your question, just kind of hold it up, and Danielle or Andrea or one of the staff will come over and grab it. And when we finish with the presentations, then we'll go through those questions. And we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. We had quite a few questions, so we didn't get through them all. But here's what we did do. We took all those questions and we responded to each person. So if you put your email on there, I promise you we will respond. Now somebody the very next day said, you promised you were going to respond. We didn't get to it that day, but we got to them all. I think the next day, it was on a Tuesday, I think we got to all of them on Thursday and maybe a few on Friday. So we did respond to everybody's question. Everybody got an answer. With that, the first portion of this is going to be kind of a panel discussion. So I'm going to have the panel members come. I think they thought I was going to like introduce them and they were going to walk up with music or something. But we've got I'll go, where are you guys going to sit? So I can go from one side to the other. All right, so we'll start on the far end here. We got Jason Angel, he's our Development Services Director. We also got Fausto Burrell, he's our Public Works Director. We have Mike Osborne, he's our Deputy Director of Water and Wastewater. Heidi, his boss, is out of town, so he's filling in. He's stuck with me. he's excited about it. And we have Kurt Woody, our Economic Development Director. So as we kind of go through this, there's 4 significant areas that we're going to cover as we talk about growth in Marana. A lot of this centers around really questions that we get on a fairly regular basis. And we answer all of these questions all the time. Like literally all the time we're responding to these basic questions that we're going to cover tonight about growth in Marana. A lot of times we cover them on our podcast. Anybody familiar, anybody know that we have a podcast here in the town? Can anybody tell me what the podcast name is? What is it? Real Talk with the Town. Very good. My name is Terry and I am your host. Right? So there you go. So we do have a podcast. A lot of the questions that come in from the community, we take those. Sometimes we go on Nextdoor. That's scary sometimes. Nextdoor, it's scary. But we go on Nextdoor, we find stuff on Nextdoor that people are talking about, curious about, asking questions about, and we make an entire podcast out of it, right? So you can certainly go to the podcast and look for the titles of things that you might be interested in. Growth of Miranda is one we covered a number of different times from a number of different angles, but we're going to try and cover some of this stuff here tonight. So we're going to start off talking a little bit. Where's my clicker? Here it is. This, so you know, are the boundaries of the town of Miranda. A lot of people don't realize that. All the way up there at the top, all the way up there at the top, that's the Pinal County line. So we go into Pinal a little bit in some areas. And all the way down here, all the way down past Orange Grove, almost to Camino del Cerro, roughly. So you can see 121.8, so we're just going to call it 122, just to be safe. Just to round it up, 122 square miles. That's a lot of land, right? So people want to know, one of the questions we get, and people say, stop growing, stop building houses, stop building things, just stop, you're growing too fast. And so I want to ask Jason, because Jason's our Development Service Director. Is it working?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
We're good. There you go.
So I wanted to ask Jason. Jason, we're going to start off with you and talk a little bit about that idea. Are we growing at a faster pace now than we have in the past? If not, what's kind of the data that would support that?
Yeah, Terry, I think we got one slide. This image that's up on the screen right now represents, in the blue columns is the regional growth. So the Tucson region. All of the growth that you're seeing in the county, city of Tucson, Santa Rita, Oro Valley, and our numbers as well. The green bars are what represent our single-family growth throughout the years. So I think our growth has been pretty steady. There's a couple of blips in there that you'll see, but on average, we do about 900 single-family homes a year. As a region, there's a demand for about 3,600 homes per year. That is pretty much the general target. In talking with the land developers and advisors, there's really a market that could support 4,500 units per year. It's just we don't have the workforce or the manpower to deliver that here.
All right. So, did I die? We need batteries.
Might have to get closer.
There are new batteries. And what's going on? Test.
Hey,
There we go.
You're good.
All right. Okay, so it sounds like from a growth standpoint, it's been pretty steady over the decades.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we were talking with the mayor about this the other day, and he had a comment about that. You started to say something, I think I know.
No.
Okay. The mayor was talking about, he's been on the council now for 16, 18 years, something like that, right? And pretty consistently over that time, we've done around an average of around 100 houses or 1,000 to 1,200 homes per year, right? All right. So, get another, whoop, wrong way. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit, and this goes to what the mayor was talking about earlier, and I heard some chuckles from the crowd about car washes and self-storage units and things like that, because we have a lot of them, and I don't know, they keep coming, I don't know why, but they do, fast food restaurants, etc. So I want to kind of put up this land and zoning map here, and Jason's going to speak to this. But Jason, if you could just kind of talk to our residents about how the zoning process works, how do we end up deciding what goes where, and what kind of control does the town have over some of that? So that's a lot, but I know you
Yeah,
can
that's a
handle it.
lot, and I'll try and keep it to the half hour that you said we had. I won't bore everyone with the gory details. You can't really see it, but at the bottom of the map here, it identifies all the different zoning categories that we have within the community. There are 29 different zoning categories. 11 of those are residential zones, and it's broken up based upon lot sizes, densities, things of that nature. Then we have, make sure I get these numbers right. We have 3 commercial zones, and we have 2 industrial zones. That makes up the large portion of our development obligations for the community. When it comes to identifying rezoning properties, like you'll see this large brown shaded portion of the community that's on the northeast side of our community. That is all state land in that area. The state land of Arizona owns that property. It's zoned as agricultural right now. But let's just, for example, somebody has agricultural owned property and they want to develop it into a subdivision, a residential subdivision. That process would require them to come in before the town, submit an application. We would look at it as to how it complies with our overall general plan. The general plan is a plan that's updated every 10 years. It's adopted by the council and ultimately ratified by the voters, the residents of the community. Excuse me. For a process like that, and I think that our next slide illustrates a little bit of a time frame, because a lot of people have a tendency to come in and think that development occurs within a very short time frame. Typically, for a development to take place in our community, you're looking at 2 to 3 plus years before you actually see a development take place. That's the amount of time that's invested in going through this. So it would start out with a resident or a developer coming in and saying, I have an idea, I have a project. Can we do a rezoning? We'll do a pre-application meeting with them where a number of our staff will sit down with them and talk about expectations in that area. Might be infrastructure that needs to be expanded, might be roads that need to be improved, it might be, drainage ways or anything like that that need to be considered as part of the development. Once that's done, we then get into a rezoning process. That rezoning process is going to take about 12 months to complete. That process is a public process. When we have the meetings that go before Plan Commission and Council, everyone that's within 300 feet receives a direct mailing from the town identifying what the plan is or the proposal is. We also post it on the website, the town's website, and advertise it in the newspaper. We also post signs on the property that identify when the meetings would take place. So that gets approved, let's say. From there, they then get into platting. The platting is identifying and breaking up the property that splits it up into each individual lot. So if you have a big subdivision that's going to be 2,000 units going in there, it'll identify all 2,000 units that go into that platting procedure. Once that's done, you then get into development plans. This is talking about the engineering of the project. This is all of the gory detail, the utilities, the roads, all of that are being designed, submitted for review and approval, and go through that. From there, they'll apply for a building permit to start review of the physical structures that go on. That could, depending upon the size of the facility, could take 3 to 6 months to complete that. Once that's approved, now they start going out and doing the earthwork. That's where you see the graders going and all the dirt flying, everything that makes our cars dirty as we're parked in the parking lots and that. From there, we're then moving into construction. And once again, based upon the size of the structure, it could take anywhere from 3 to 12 months, maybe even longer, depending upon if it's a really large structure, to complete that. So that's where you get that 2 to 3 plus year time frame for a project to be delivered.
Thank you, Jason. So we've talked a little bit about the size of Marana. We've talked about the fact that construction is coming. I'm curious if you can just cover for us a little bit about why we believe people are interested in coming to Marana, and how much space do we still have? I mean, we have 122 square miles. How much of that is already built on? How much is available? And why are people, do you think, coming to Marana wanting to build here?
I can explain from my standpoint. I moved here from Wisconsin, moved here 8 years ago. And as part of that process, Terry may remember, I had said I was sick and tired of the snow and didn't want to operate a snow blower anymore. So I wanted to move to a warmer climate where my kids could be outside year round. But it's the natural beauty of the area. It's people that love to be outdoors and like to either be hiking, biking, just enjoying the outdoors here, I think is a large attraction to that. From a development standpoint, 122 square miles roughly. About 30% of our community is developed, and that leaves about 70% that is still available for development. I'm not saying it's all gonna be built. I'm just saying, if people wanted to come in and request a project, that's about 70% of our community is still available for development at that time.
And there's quite a bit of state land, which is a whole different thing, and so of the state land in our community, about what percentage of that? Do you have any idea?
You know, state land is about, I would say 35 to, mid-30s% of our overall community. Large portion is, like I identified on that map, is between Dove Mountain and I-10. The other portion is out by the airport, and then going up around the west side of the community up towards Pinell. That is all state land property there.
All right. Well, we're gonna move right on to economic development here. And Kurt will talk a little bit too, I think, about what control we have over what actually comes into our community. So,
Well, very little. Jason alluded to it. Once a private property owner has a zoning in place, that zone could have up to 15, 20, 25 different uses that are that can be done on that property. So if you're in a commercial zone, it could be a Taco Bell, it could be a car wash, it could be a commercial office building. There'd be a number of things depending on what type of zone you have. So when you see product that you don't particularly want to see any more of, like the car washes and fast food places, we don't control that. We can't. Legally, we cannot do that. That is privately owned property. So where we can start to control what comes into the town is the economic development side. Is the first thing we do is put together an economic development strategic plan. And this is on the website under my Department of Economic Development. You can read the plan. And what you do is you go, my answer is going to be pretty short, but it's much more in depth. They'll go through a market study. They'll look at the different types of industries that you already have within your town. They'll also look at the industries that they think are going to be hot over the next 10 years. Are there any synergies to go ahead and recruit those same types of industries for cluster opportunities for campuses? So once they go through all of the methodology of looking at your town, what you have, what you could recruit, what you should recruit, then comes the industries that come out of that plan of, here's what we think you should be going after because of what you have right now. In this plan, 4 industries emerge to the top: information technology, advanced manufacturing, supply chain logistics. So when you think of the town of Marana and 19 miles of Interstate 10 bisect our town, logistics is a pretty easy one to pull out of that pile. And then lastly, healthcare. We've got a little bit of healthcare already started within the town of Marana. We've got some doctor's offices, urgent care facilities. We have a dialysis clinic. Tucson Medical Center purchased 32 acres at the Marana Center at Twin Peaks and I-10. They will phase that, start off with some medical office buildings and phase into a small hospital campus there. So healthcare was another emerging industry that came out of this plan. Now, if someone in a different market sector comes to the town of Marana and says, hey, I'm interested in building and bringing my company here, would we talk to them? Of course. Yeah, it doesn't have to be just those 4 market sectors. We'll talk to anybody and find out if it's a good fit and where that fit should be.
all right, very good, Kurt. And could you just cover real quick, before you give the mic up, could you cover real quick, a lot of people ask about those 2 large buildings north of Tangerine, right up against I-10, that have been vacant since they were built, pretty much vacant, right? So what are we doing with those buildings, man? Why isn't anybody in those buildings, and what are you doing to try and fix that, Kurt?
Nah, nothing. We just turned our back on it. We're just going to let them rot there. But no, kidding, of course. So the developer, it's a company out of Kansas City. They've built these types of facilities all over the country. And they have a very strong corporate following of this type of product. So at the time that they built these buildings, one is a little over 400,000 square feet. The other is a little over 500,000 square feet. It was a hot market. But usually by the time they open the doors, they have a corporate user to go into their facilities. This time, the market went soft when they opened the doors. There's a lot of that product up in Phoenix. Those are going to get absorbed first before we get down to Marana. So what the developer decided to do, what they typically would do is 1 user per building. So there would be just 2 companies in those 2 buildings. Now they've decided we need to open this up to different markets that only need 100,000 square feet, 200,000 square feet. So they're willing to quad off those buildings to attract smaller companies. So we are proposing light manufacturing, logistics, information technology type. We've had proposals on a semiconductor company. We had a proposal on an electric semi-truck manufacturing company. So it's a wide range of industries that we're looking at to put in those facilities. Now, they were designed and built to be just logistics, but they can be retrofitted for just about any type of manufacturing. So we're very much involved trying to fill those spaces. The commercial real estate broker is CBRE, and I work closely with him, the broker, and we're getting some traction on those buildings right now. I think we're going to have our first user here in the very near future.
All right, Kurt, thank you. What happened? There we go. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about infrastructure and services, and because I know this is a topic that people get very concerned about, water. Are we going to have enough water? What about the roads? Are we going to be able to accomplish getting transportation, people from point A to point B without having people stuck in traffic jams? So I got 2 guys that are going to talk about that. We're going to start with water over here with Mike. So Mike, what is it we do to ensure that we have a sustainable water portfolio and that we can ensure that our residents don't have to worry about turning on the faucet and getting water?
Yeah, so absolutely. So Marana is in the Tucson Active Management area, which basically means for every gallon of water we pump out of the ground, we have to put a gallon of water back into the ground. And we do that through our designation of assured water supply, where we go through and we find the water to be able to recharge the aquifer, to be able to match that gallon for gallon, to achieve our safe yield goal. And safe yield means that we're doing just that, gallon for gallon. So when we go through and we do our designation of assured water supply, we're looking at all of the available water supplies that are on the market. There's a number of them out there, and recently we've been focusing a lot of attention on our renewable local resources supply to be able to recharge our aquifer. So right now we currently have roughly 15,000 acre feet a year that we can pledge towards our designation of assured water supply. And then
What's an acre foot, man?
an acre foot is
What's
about
an acre foot of water? How much water is that?
about 300,000 gallons
300,000 gallons
Yeah.
for 1 acre foot.
for 1 acre foot. Yeah.
So 15,000 acre feet, calculating that.
That's about 5 billion gallons.
That's what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's about 5 billion gallons.
I was right there. I was
Yeah.
just
No.
so close.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We go back and forth between gallons and acre feet. Acre feet numbers are easier to manage than the gallon numbers. So yeah, we go back and forth on that. So right now, currently of that 15,000 acre feet that we have, we're using less than a quarter of that right now. So we have the ability to add a lot more development and be able to guarantee that 100-year water supply for our residents.
All right, can you talk a little bit about the aquifer, the primary aquifer in Marana and its health? Is it going down? Is it coming in? What's that look like over the last 20 years, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the last 20 years, we've seen a steady increase in the water levels here in Marana, largely because it is kind of downstream. We have a lot of farming activities that help to recharge that aquifer. We have the Santa Cruz River, of course, which is a big contributor to helping that aquifer recover.
And can you talk, Mike, just briefly about how we have a lot of farmland, you mentioned that, and how farmland ends up impacting our water availability, how much water is used on a field to water cotton versus how much water is used, say, for residential?
Yeah, absolutely. So a typical farm field here in Marana uses about 3.5 acre feet per acre per year. So trying to keep those numbers small. So we just are looking at per acre of farmland uses about 3.5 acre feet a year. Typical residential development uses about 2.4 acre feet per acre per year. So there is a significant water savings when a property is converted from ag to residential.
All right, thank you. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to, whoops, I'll go back to Fausto, because we're still talking about infrastructure. So Fausto, what are we doing? People don't like waiting at lights in Marana. That's not acceptable. We can't have that. So what kinds of things are we doing to ensure that people aren't gonna have to wait at the traffic light for more than a phase of the traffic light?
Well, thanks for clarifying that, Terry, because, yeah, you're still gonna have to wait at a traffic light. I'm sorry, sorry up front. I think getting back to development, as this is obviously what we're talking about here, something to keep in mind is Jason gave the whole chart as far as the length of time, and he mentioned some of the weeds and the nuts and bolts that happen. As part of that engineering, we do look at every single development that comes in, and what's performed is called a TIA, a traffic impact analysis. So they look at the impacts of that development. From small ones up to major master plan communities, they look at the impacts, and obviously the larger the development, the more strenuous and the more impacts they need to take into account for. So that is something that we do with development. The other thing we do, and I know Mike probably didn't mention it here, but we do a lot of master planning. It's really critical in the water, in the wastewater field, and also for us in our traffic. We master plan our community. We look at the roads where we're going to need. A lot of it is working with our regional partners, looking at like the PAG, Pima Association of Governments, looking at their modeling, and they take into account where traffic's going to go to. A lot of it is anticipating where growth. So of course, where we're talking about, where Woody mentioned, a lot of developments, like economic developments, a lot of things that drive traffic and where it's going to attract traffic through to. So various locations. So as part of that, we're also looking at where do we think we're going to grow and where are we going to need the infrastructure to get in front of that. So those are a lot of the things we look at.
Can you talk a little bit about what we do in terms of planning, the master plans and things of that nature?
Yeah, sure. Good question, Terry. So some of the things we do that we look at from a traffic realm specifically, or transportation realm, we are looking at the town, what our current needs are, and also we're forecasting out into the future. So again, getting back to where do we think economic growth is going to happen? Where do we think workforces are going to go? We know right now a lot of our traffic is heading to the south, towards the Tucson region. We know in time, and I'm sure Kurt wants to see this, the circulation patterns are going to change a little bit. Traffic's going to probably stay within Marana, go a little bit towards the north. So as part of that, we work with consultants. They look at all this data, they look at the modeling, and then they help us determine where do we need these roadways. And when we do that, we break it up into short, mid, and long term. And that could be anywhere from the 5 to 10 year being a short term, and then the 15 to 20 being a little bit more longer, and somewhere in between being the mid-range. That helps us plan and forecast. And also, what we do more immediately is we have a 5-year CIP program that we do identify what we are doing as the town, the projects that we are building. And CIP is the Capital Improvement Program. And that's where we do a lot of our transportation projects and other projects that you see, whether it be a facility like the MARC, parks, other items. But also, in hand with that, we are working with development services, and we're looking at what projects or what big projects are coming underway, and we know what infrastructure needs are required for those particular projects. So they may extend some roadways. A good example is Clark Farms Boulevard. If any of you have driven up there north on Tangerine, you'll see that Clark Farms Boulevard was recently built and extended to the north. That's going to continue eventually and tie into the existing portion that's further north and west. So those are the type of things that happen with development and some of the things we do to help.
All right, very good, Fausto, thank you. All right, and then as far as funding for growth, I'm going to touch on this real quick. Growth pays for growth. That's the mentality, that's the mantra that the council has adopted for decades now. So when a new development comes into the community, they have to pay for whatever infrastructure. If there's a roadway that has to be built, they got to pay for that. If there's a water line that has to be built, they have to pay for that. If there's a sewer line that has to be built, they have to pay for that. So growth pays for growth. The developers have to pay for whatever impact they have. That's why we have what's called impact fees. those impact fees pay for that growth. Now, we got a couple of questions here before we move on to the RTA. So make sure if you do have questions, get those into one of the folks here, and we'll try to answer. First one I can answer: will the Detroit Tigers win tomorrow? I know where that came from, Tom Somerville. If they played like they did today, no. If they played like they did on Tuesday, then yes. So how's that for? This next one here: can you tell us how growth in treatment capabilities affect the town's renewable water portfolio? So that sounds like a question for Mike.
So the question is, how does treatment change?
How does the growth or the growth in treatment capabilities, so the ability at water treatment campuses and things like that,
Yeah.
And at the sewage treatment plants, how does that affect our water portfolio?
Yeah, so the increase in the technology and the treatment capabilities at, say, let's use the wastewater treatment facility as an example, allows us to more efficiently clean that water to a higher standard, to be able to recharge our aquifer in the long run. So currently at our existing WRF, our water reclamation facility, we treat that water to A+ standards, which is the highest standard in the state, and that allows us to use that water for a number of different purposes. Our main goal is for recharge, to recharge the aquifer. But that increase in technology and capabilities makes us more efficient, and makes that water cleaner.
All right. Well, board, panel, really appreciate your time and your information, and we're going to go ahead and move on to RTA. So, yeah, give them a round of applause. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Why not? They did all right. B+.
You're okay.
B+. A+ water. All right. So the next, oh yeah. So again, don't forget about Real Talk with the Town. There's a bunch of information on there if you need additional information, more in-depth information on any of the topics that we talked about here tonight. And there's how you can follow us. So the next topic we're going to cover is the RTA next, and we have Steve Huffman over here from the RTA. RTA stands for Regional Transportation Authority. And this has been a pretty big thing for Pima County for the last 20 years. Steve is going to go ahead and cover kind of just an overview of the RTA next. And then I'm going to come up and talk a little bit about Marana-specific projects.
Perfect. Is there right here, right?
Yep. The down button. There you go.
All right, in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about transportation. My name is Steve Huffman. I am a community affairs person for the Pima County Regional Transportation Authority. I'm going to give you, just so you know what you're going to see, going to give you a little bit of history about the RTA, tell you what role it is in our community, and what's in the RTA Next plan. So just so I know who I'm talking to, how many people were living either here in Marana or somewhere in Pima County back in 2006? Okay, that's good. Okay, so let me tell you about the RTA in case you have never heard of this before. So back in 2004, the Arizona State Legislature created the authority for the Pima County, the county of Pima County, to create a Pima County Regional Transportation Authority. Now, I want to make sure that I make this clear. The Regional Transportation Authority here in Pima County is an independent, technically called a special taxing district that was created by the state legislature, but we are not part of the Pima County government. So we're not part of Pima County at all. We are tasked with doing transportation infrastructure improvements in Pima County. Every single local city and town, including the 2 tribes and a representative of Arizona Department of Transportation are on our members. So it's a place where we can coordinate amongst all the different jurisdictions, but we are independent of any of the local governments, but they are part of our board of directors. Oop, went the wrong way. So, here's just so you get a feel. Obviously, a major part of what we do in the Regional Transportation Authority is road improvements, but that's not all we do. We also do a lot of investment in bike paths, pedestrian walkways, traffic intersection safety improvements, obviously the roads, but we also invest money in transit, paratransit, services. So there's a lot of stuff we do. Any sort of method that you would use to get somewhere, whether it's sidewalks, bike paths, buses, roads, we're all a part of. I always tell people, if you get nothing out of this presentation, this is the most important slide. So the way that the Pima County Regional Transportation Authority operates is we have to go to the voters. I told you we passed that bill in 2004. In 2006, we went to the voters of Pima County, and that's why I asked you that question. And the voters approved two things on the ballot. Number one was a 20-year transportation plan. Number two was a half-cent sales tax to pay for that plan. The reason why we have two separate questions is there's no other way to fund the transportation plan except for the half-cent voter-approved sales tax. That's what's in the state law. So when you go to the ballot, you're going to see two questions. One is the transportation plan. One is the half-cent sales tax to pay for the plan. Just know that if you go to the ballot, you vote for the plan, but you don't vote for the sales tax. And I'm not here advocating how you can vote. I want to make that clear. But there's no other funding source. So both of those will be on the ballot. So the voters approved the current plan back in 2006 and the half-cent sales tax to pay for it. But I want you to see this slide because if you look, we bring in about $126 million a year from that voter-approved half-cent sales tax. We bring in about $50 million a year from state and federal funding that come into our region. So you can see that that voter-approved half-cent sales tax represents about 2/3 of all the money that's available for transportation, infrastructure improvements in Pima County. What that also means is the current plan that was passed in 2006 expires in 2026. If we do not have a new plan and a new half-cent sales tax to pay for that plan, we lose overnight about 2/3 of all the money that's available for transportation, infrastructure improvement in our community. So just imagine your family budget if all of a sudden you lost 2/3 of your income overnight and you were having to pay for the same bills, the same everything you have. That's the position that we're in right now. Obviously, we appreciate the state and federal money coming in, but the RTA money, the voter-approved half-cent sales tax, is a significant portion of the funding available if you want to continue to improve transportation in our community. So we already talked about that. So this is important too. A lot of people ask me, why do we need a sales tax? If you think about the other alternatives that we have for funding transportation, we appreciate the state and federal money that comes in, but the other alternative that we would have to the half-cent voter-approved sales tax would be going to a bond election, for example, where the voters approve that also. If you have a bond election, the price of fixing our roads is going to be paid for by Pima County businesses and Pima County homeowners. With a sales tax, everybody who uses the roads pays for the roads. So that includes people who are tourists, winter visitors, people just passing through town. Anybody that drives on roads anywhere in Pima County will contribute to paying for our roads. So we don't just put the burden on homeowners and businesses. You can see the sales tax that we collect, it's a half-cent. It's the same sales tax that you pay any store that you go to, anything that you purchase. One thing I want to make sure you know is that we do exclude groceries and pharmaceuticals from that half-cent sales tax. Here's another question that we hear all the time. As I told you, we've got existing sales tax right now that was approved in 2006. That expires in 2026. If the new plan and the new half-cent sales tax to pay for the new plan passes, The old tax goes away, so there's not gonna be double taxation. As soon as the new plan and the new sales tax passes, the old one goes away. Your tax rate will not increase, so the sales tax rate that you're paying right now here in Pima County will be the same one that you pay after the plan and the voter-approved sales tax to pay for the plan passes. So there will not be any double taxation in that. The RTA Next plan, and if you want to stop by, if you didn't get it on the way in, you can get it on the way out. We have a list of all the projects that are proposed under RTA Next, but we are investing in roadway projects. There's about 31 of them that are in the RTA Next plan. There are also 7 projects that were approved back in 2006 that we're asking the voters to take a look at and include in the RTA Next plan. The reason we're doing that is, you can imagine back in 2006, we had no idea that we were gonna go through the Great Recession of 2008. We had projections for population growth that did not quite arrive at the levels that we thought back almost 20 years ago now. We also had a pandemic, and you guys might have heard we had a little bit of inflation the last few years. All those impact the cost of not just eggs, but the cost of road and asphalt and all those things that we're doing. So we've got 7 projects that are included. Some of them are from the first RTA. Others are also RTA projects, but we've determined over time that what we passed in 2006 didn't exactly meet the needs of what we have right now. So there are those projects in there too. So roadway projects, safety and ADA transportation, what that is the pedestrian walkways, the sidewalks, the intersection improvements for safety. We also, this is a new thing based on the feedback we got from the community, but we're investing some money into arterial and collector road pavement rehabilitation. These are roads that are basically failing, that we're gonna go in and completely demolish and rebuild them, but they're arterial roads that you guys use every day. We also invest money, you can see that overpass there, environmental for wildlife linkages. Sometimes people ask me questions about that. We have both overpasses and underpasses for wildlife to cross safely over our roads. Sometimes people ask me about that and they're like, why are we spending money on this? And I say, well, it's obviously good for the critters, but it's also good for us, because nobody wants to be in a 7-car pileup when a coyote or a deer runs in front of your car. So if we invest a little bit of money into safe passageways for them, that not only helps them, it helps us. And obviously, we also invest a lot of money in transit, bus services, paratransit, which is critical to a lot of people in our community. So here's, let's see if we did this right. So here is a map that you can see of roadways, transportation corridors that we invested in from the first plan. And you guys are super lucky, because when I did this the first time, they kept flashing back and forth between the 2 maps, and you couldn't tell what was what, so we got it a little bit better this time. So this is where we invested money in transportation corridors in 2006. Oop. This is a map you can see, so you can see the overall impact. The blue is new transportation and corridors in the RTA Next. So you can see over the last 20 years and the next 20 years, the footprint that we have had and plan to have on this community. It's a significant investment in improvements in our community. So a little bit about the first RTA, just so you see the impact of this. The first RTA, we completed over 1,000 transportation improvements in our community. We invested $1.6 billion, that was from the voter-approved sales tax. But from that investment, we leveraged more than $3 billion in public-private investment. And think about that, a perfect example would be right here in Marana, the Twin Peaks interchange. Look at all the economic development activity that came about after we completed that interchange and all the business activity that's going on there now. In the current plan, by the way, and Terry's gonna go through what's in Marana, but we have plans to do another traffic interchange on Moore Road, Cortera Road, and Tangerine Road, all in the Marana area. And we expect similar improvements in our economy from that. We estimate on the passage of RTA Next that will generate over the next 20 years 88,000 new permanent jobs and billions of dollars in private investment in addition to what we're investing from the sales tax. So I'm almost done here, Terry. I'm actually almost done here. So one of the things I just want to point out is we did learn some lessons from the first RTA, and I've had people say, I saw stuff in the paper, but one of the things that we did is we were smarter about our revenue projections so we don't have a shortfall like we had. Again, we didn't anticipate the recession and all those things, but we're trying to be smarter about that. We've got lots of citizen oversight over the RTA, so we have regular people that meet on a regular basis to make sure we're doing what we said we're gonna do. We also get audited by the state every 5 years to make sure we're doing what we promised the voters to do. And we make a concerted effort to reach out to the public to get their feedback. So I'm gonna turn this over to Terry, but I appreciate your time. If you wanna scan that QR code, that'll take you to our website. You can get more information. We have more information at the front table, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Steve. All right, so you can certainly go online and look at all the projects that were completed as a result of RTA throughout Pima County. Highlight the ones that were directly in the town of Marana. You can see that beautiful interchange there. So you had Twin Peaks interchange, and that's completed. You have the Ina Road interchange, and that is completed, and grade separated interchange going over the railroad crossing there. Camino de Mañana was basically the Twin Peaks. So you had Twin Peaks on the west side that was completed. It goes right into Continental Ranch here. Then you have Twin Peaks that goes to the east and all the way up into Duck Mountain, that beautiful 4-lane roadway. It's actually a very beautiful road to drive up and to drive down, quite frankly. I enjoyed that. And then Tangerine Road widening, which is still in progress, but it started all the way in Oracle, right, at Oracle Road. It moved to the east, or to the west, terminated at Dub Mountain Boulevard, and right now we're doing the portion that is from I-10 up to about a little bit past where the old breakers is, past Trico Electric in that area. That's Tangerine widening 2A, and then we'll complete Tangerine widening 2B, which will be from that terminus to Dub Mountain Boulevard. So that will be completed here in the near future. So let's talk a little bit about what projects are coming for the town of Marana in the RTA next. First one there is Moore Road interchange, Moore Road and I-10. And I'll show you on a map here in a minute where that's at. This is the project, 30 million from the RTA, 90 million from ADOT. That's important, keep that in mind here in a minute. But that's a grade separated interchange at Moore Road. And Moore Road is essentially about halfway between Marana interchange and the Tangerine interchange. And I'll explain why we're doing that here in just a minute. The next one is Tangerine Road and I-10. That one we're doing some interim improvements on. We actually started last week. I haven't seen a whole lot of dirt flying, but they assure me that they're working on it. And that's a $25 million out of RTA and $160 million from ADOT. So add those up, man, and that amount gets pretty steep. Not nearly as steep though as Cortero. That one's a big one. You got 20 plus million from the RTA and 220 million from ADOT to complete that project, right? So it's three very significant interchanges, a whole lot of money, and then widening Ina Road on the east side of the freeway, from the freeway to Camino de la Tierra, okay? So that's gonna widen it to 3 lanes. The good thing there is we're gonna use the existing pavement that we have, and we're gonna build a really nice 12-foot wide bike path on the north side of Ina, so that bikes don't have to ride on Ina. They actually have a really nice bike path, and we increase the traffic flow there by about 33%. So you can see there, if you add up those numbers, the RTA numbers on the left, you got 91.3 million RTA, but that leverages an additional 486 million from ADOT. So you can see the amount of investment that the town gets in the way of infrastructure for transportation by being a part of the RTA Next. So these are essentially the projects. I'll run through these somewhat quickly. So Moore Road, as I said, is right here where the yellow is, Tangerine's down here, and Miranda Interchange is right up here. And the reason you have to do this, because at the point that we need to do Tangerine here and do a grade separated interchange here, we've got to shut down that interchange. And if you shut down Tangerine and all you have is Miranda, that's a total mess. It absolutely can't accommodate that. So putting a grade separated interchange here gets people east and west across the freeway, and that will be a great addition to that area. Again, economic development that will occur at the interchange, and that's why we're doing that project. This one, Tangerine, same kind of deal. You know, when we do the interim improvements, it's going to be just like Cortero. The town is investing that money. Obviously, that's an ADOT facility. It's their interchange. It's not ours. But the town is investing roughly, Fausto, what is that? 15, 16 million? What is it?
13.
13. We're getting a bargain. We're getting a bargain. 13 million to do some improvements that are essentially going to take it and make it look like Cortero, which will greatly assist getting traffic through that interchange until we can do the grade separated interchange. And again, what this entails is over the railroad with on-ramps, off-ramps, lighting, all of those things. Essentially, if you think about a Twin Peaks or an Ina Road interchange, that's what Tangerine will be, that's what Moore Road will be, and that's what Cortero will be. I know nobody, you probably aren't familiar with Cortero, but Cortero, yeah, Cortero is an interchange here in Continental Ranch, and it needs some work. And so that's what RTA Next will do for us. It'll create a grade separated interchange. Again, if you think about Ina, if you think about Twin Peaks, that's essentially what you're looking at there. And then Ina Road, which I think I covered pretty well there, multi-use paths, widen it 3 lanes in each direction, greatly enhance the capacity there, and get people through there a little bit easier. A couple of other ones that aren't really, most of it's not in Miranda, and that's Thornydale and Silverbell. Silverbell is going to be widened from Ina Road all the way down to Camino del Cerro, 4-lane divided roadway. That's, in my opinion, as a former law enforcement person, that's a very important project. It's very important because when we have traffic accidents on the freeway, DPS shuts it down, we have no way for people to get north-south. So having a nice 4-lane divided roadway will greatly enhance people's ability to get north-south on this side of the freeway. And then Thornydale, from Tangerine going all the way down to Cortero. If you think about what Thornydale is from Orange Grove up to Cortero, it's a 4-lane divided roadway that will continue, sidewalks on both sides, lighting, all of those things. So although those projects aren't in Miranda proper, a little bit of the Thornydale one is, a little bit of the Silverbell one is, they still have a tremendous impact on our residents. And I think that's the last slide, it is. Right, so we have, looks like a few questions coming in from Vanna. Thank you, Vanna.
Please define the length of time.
Define the length of time for period 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each period is 5 years. I didn't talk about the period. So the Moore Road for Miranda would be done in period 1. Period 2, Tangerine. Period 3 is Cortero. Period 4, I think actually period 3 is also Ina Road. So that's the order, and each period is 5 years.
Starting from 2027.
Starting from 2026, actually, right? July of 26 is when it starts. Yeah. fiscal year 27. When funding for a particular project, what does it say?
When funding for a particular project period is exhausted, where does spending come from to finish the project?
Yeah, so with RTA, this is specifically for RTA Next, if we run out of money for a particular project, we do have additional monies through what's called PAG regional funds, and those monies are given to the jurisdictions based on population. So some of those monies can go into, in fact did in RTA 1, those monies were basically pulled into the RTA and were utilized to help complete some of those projects. What is ratio of RTA to ADOT funding? Is it always the same calculation? It really depends. There's no calculation, there's no formula that's utilized. It's basically, when we put the plan together, ADOT was at the table, we talked about what money was available from the RTA based on what we anticipate is going to come in, and we allotted money to various projects. Like, for example, Coyote had a lot more RTA money initially. It had like $200 million. But then that took away money from other projects, and ADOT came to the table and said, look, you come to the table with 25, 30 million, we'll come to the table with the remainder. So ADOT's been a tremendous partner in this. What happens if RTA Next is underfunded like the initial project was? Well, we will have to make difficult decisions, just like we did this time. And I do believe, I think instead of going with the optimistic numbers like we did in RTA 1, we're going with the pessimistic numbers. So I think we feel much better about that. We went with the more pessimistic numbers relative to growth. So I think the economists who have been involved in this, the numbers people, and the RTA board, and that was the direction that the RTA board gave. And the RTA board is comprised of the mayors of all the jurisdictions. Said, look, we're not gonna find ourselves in this position again. We're not going with the moderate. We're not going with the high end. We're going with pessimistic. Is that right, Rick? 100% right. Okay. All right. So I think that covers RTA. So we are going to jump into a presentation now on data centers. And as the mayor said, this is a pretty hot topic. There was one that was presented in the city recently. The mayor indicated that we anticipate that we're going to get an application at some point. There have been certainly developers who have come and talked to us about this. We don't have any applications yet, but that's probably going to happen at some point. But this is more about talking about what the town has done to prepare for this. And there's been a lot of work that's been done in the last couple of years. And I got two people here that I have bestowed upon them PhDs in data centerology. They're going to talk because they were the ones that actually crafted an ordinance for us. So they got a real education in data centers. And we did a lot of discussions and talks with other jurisdictions about the pros and the cons, and do we want this, do we not want this? And I think you'll see when we're done here, you'll see that the town has really positioned ourselves well to be in the driver's seat on this thing. So I didn't introduce, because she wasn't on the panel, but Jane Farrell is our town attorney, and she did a lot of the writing for that, and then Jason Angel is our development services director.
Thank you, Terry. All right, so what we want to do is take some time to walk through the process that we went through to adopt an ordinance. And at the time in which we adopted a data center specific ordinance, we were the first known community in the state of Arizona to do so. So as Terry alluded, Jane and I spent quite a bit of time along with other staff doing a lot of research in that. So we'll get through this, we'll talk through a little bit of the process.
Maybe.
All right. So the outline here for the presentation is why data centers in Arizona? Why are they looking here? Process that we undertook, the ordinance and an overview. We'll talk about water, we'll talk about power. We do have representatives from TEP that we can ask some questions of them as well. And then we'll get into some general discussion, Q&A. First thing I wanted to cover is, this is the top 10 geographical areas in the state, or in the country, based upon data centers. These are the hottest markets for data centers right now. North Virginia, I think, makes a lot of sense. When you think about all the defense departments and everything that's located there, that was a lot of where our research was. And Jane will talk about that a little bit later on as we get into this. But Phoenix is number 2. The Phoenix market is the number 2 market for density of data centers within the entire country. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as to why Phoenix, why the state of Arizona has basically put out tools and incentives to help attract data centers here.
So for the question of why Arizona, in 2013, the Arizona State Legislature passed or adopted a program that gives tax incentives to data centers to come to the state of Arizona. And essentially, for computer data center equipment, so all of the computers, servers, all of the things that go inside of a data center building, the data center developer doesn't have to pay any sales tax or use tax at the state, local, or federal level. So it was something that the state of Arizona decided to try to incentivize as an industry to come to the state of Arizona. And when we first started getting interest in the town of Marana, having data center developers come in to talk to us, this was one of the very first things that they mentioned to us, is why they were here. Because we asked that question too, why Marana, why Arizona? And these are very attractive tax incentives for the development, because that equipment is worth probably billions of dollars. I'm not sure how much it's worth, but it's a lot of money, so it's a big tax break for them. And it lasts, under the current program, it lasts 10 to 20 years where they won't have to pay those taxes.
So the process, like Jane had said, we had for probably the last 2 to 3 years, we've had different data center developers come to the town and express an interest in perhaps building a project in our community. And it got us to talking through, why are they looking at us, and how are we positioned as a community to best consider a proposal if it comes in. And so what we did is the previous ordinance did not define a data center. So one of the first things we did, and we'll show you, that we crafted a definition that took a long time to come up with. And then we looked at the different type of requests that were coming in, and then the fact that technology is continuing to evolve. With AI, cloud storage, all of the dependencies that we have on technology is really driving a lot of this. So the research that we did, like I said, we did a lot of online. We didn't fly out to West Virginia and spend time with them, but we did spend quite a bit of time online looking at them. We did go up to the valley, a couple of staff members. If you've been up to the valley, the Mesa area, Casa Grande, Chandler, they all experience a lot of data center growth up there. One of the things that we learned was in Mesa, from their staff, was they made an interpretation of their zoning code that said data centers are classified as indoor self-storage. Makes sense to a degree, right? It's just a big box where you store a bunch of computer equipment, and it's within a confined building. As soon as they made that determination, all of this critical property in their community got eaten up by data centers. Data centers building exactly where you don't want them, right next to existing residential development, in your prime commercial corridors, things of that nature. And they couldn't undo what they just had done. So we quickly jumped on that and said, okay, we need to do this. So we drafted an ordinance, did several iterations of it. We took it to the council, got their feedback, gave them all of the gory details that we had discovered, all the things, the options, from setbacks and all of that. We put it out, once we had what we thought was a final draft, we put it out for public comment review for about 45 days. We got a grocery list of suggested changes and amendments or things we didn't consider. We made changes to the ordinance and then ultimately brought it back to the council. And in December of last year, the council adopted the ordinance. So we've had that since December of '24 in place and on the books.
So the objectives for the ordinance when we started putting it together were those kind of addressing these issues that are on this slide, the bullet points there: location, noise, appearance, water, power, and we'll get into a little bit more detail in each of these. But just our overreaching objective was not to put together an ordinance that favored data centers or an ordinance that was against or disfavorable to data centers. What we wanted to do was, we knew that we were going to be looking at getting some applications, that more than likely there were going to be data center developers that wanted to come into the town of Marana. So we were just trying to put ourselves, put the council, and ultimately the town citizens in the best position to be able to evaluate each and every one of these applications as they came in on their own merits, on a case-by-case basis, to see if it made sense to move forward for the town or if it didn't. So that's really was our goal in putting these things together. In each of these issues, to speak for just a moment about some of the research, in Northern Virginia, as that previous slide said, that's the capital of data centers in the United States. They've had them there for a couple decades, 10, 20 years that they've been dealing with it. Several municipalities and counties in that area hired consultants, and they had extensive reviews of what's wrong with our ordinance, what's working in our ordinance. And these 5 things became kind of the biggest issues that we saw were creating issues and that we needed to try to address in a way that would be favorable to the town of Marana.
So at a high level, for the new ordinance, we define data centers as a specific use, and that'll be our next slide here to go through that definition. We also looked at them from a couple of different angles. A principal use is the primary use of a property. Your home is a principal use. If you have a detached garage, that is an accessory use. It's an accessory to the primary. So we looked at those two, and in the accessory case, the example I used as we went through this was, if a medical campus wanted to come on and build a hospital and all the supporting medical offices to go with it, they might also want to include a data center as part of that. So you might have a 100-acre medical campus with a 10 or 15,000 square foot data center included as part of it. We wanted to make sure that we accounted for that type of use possibility. We looked at the noise standards, studied decibel levels and all of that. It was another one of those areas where Jane and I never thought we would get into acoustical engineering, and we're getting close to maybe a master's in that.
Yeah, not quite a PhD.
Not a PhD.
Yeah.
Then we looked at the design standards. Data centers, for the most part, when you hear them and you see them, the ones that have been constructed or standing for a decade plus, they're a giant gray box. There's no character to them, there's no windows. It's an above ground bunker. We don't want that if a data center is to be included in our community. We want it to be architecturally, aesthetically pleasing to the eye so that it looks like any other type of business operation within the community. And then we looked at site design standards as well. Depending upon where one would be proposed, we're talking about landscaping buffers, we're talking about separations, we're talking about heights, all of that that need to be considered as part of the overall look of a project.
So this slide lays out the definition that we landed on for data centers. And like Jason said, we did spend a lot of time on this. because it's the foundation of the whole ordinance, is to make sure that we have defined data centers broadly enough and correctly, and not as indoor storage like some of our neighbors did. And it's a facility used primarily for the storage, management, processing, and transmission of digital data, which houses computer or network equipment, systems, servers, appliances, and other associated components related to digital data operations. Essentially, it's a large building or series of buildings, and they have servers and computers and racks of them, is what it is. And it is the cloud. It's the cloud storage, things that go to the cloud. It's not an actual cloud in the sky. It's a data center is where the cloud is housed. We give some examples in our definition. It includes things like weather modeling and cryptocurrency mining, because those types of things have the same kind of impact, all of those types of examples of what we want to include in this. And that's, again, really what we're looking at here is how is this gonna impact the town's residents? So that's what we're trying to look at here. We had a question at our first meeting about, someone said, well, can I still mine cryptocurrency in my room at my house? And yes, the town is not regulating the activity of cryptocurrency mining with its ordinance. What we are regulating here is the land use of data centers. So I just make that clear. Can we?
Yeah, why don't you
Okay.
do this?
So the first thing that we want to look at is location. Where, if we're going to have a data center in the town, and that's an if one is approved, where would we want them to go? And as you can see in this table lists our zoning designations, with ag being agriculture. There's several types of residential neighborhoods, zoning districts, and then you get down to the right-hand end, you have commercial districts and industrial districts. And this is all in our town code. If anybody's interested and wanted to look at it, it's on our website. So what we decided is that we were going to not allow data centers in any of our zones as a principal use. That's what the X means. You can't go in there. It's not a permitted use unless you go through a rezoning process and get a specific plan approved by the town council that allows you to go there. And what that means is that in Marana, they're not going to be able to build a data center without going through a whole public hearing process, which I think we'll describe in more detail in the next slide, but has to go to the planning commission, has to go to the town council. There's a whole public hearing process. If you make it a permitted use, then that means that if you're in that district, you can do it without that type of a process. And that's what we decided we didn't want to do. That we wanted each application to have to be reviewed on its own merits, based on its location and what it looks like and how big it is and all of those things. With the one caveat being that Jason alluded to, for our light industrial zone and our heavy industrial zones, we allow a data center as an accessory use. That's what the A means on the far right-hand side there. And that's like the example of the hospital, that if they need to have a data center as an accessory use to serve the hospital, to serve the business that's on the site, that will be allowed in our industrial zones. Otherwise, as the language at the top of the slide says, data centers aren't permitted unless approved as a specific plan or a specific plan amendment through the rezoning process.
So this is, and I touched on this earlier in the evening when we talked about an approval process. So now, as we spell out that they have to go through that specific plan, they would typically come in and do a pre-application meeting with us. That's where we would first learn about them. Then we would have a formal application that would be submitted. And then we start going into the citizen review process. Now, this, I don't have time frames there, but it all depends upon the feedback that's provided to any project, not just data centers. Any project that we provide feedback at a pre-op, typically that applicant goes back makes adjustment tweaks, whatever, gathers additional information that will be required, and then submits an application. That could be weeks, that could be months, that could be even beyond a year before we see an actual application. From the application we go through, we make sure that it checks all the boxes that are required by the ordinance. Once it's determined that they meet all of the requirements outlined in the code, then we can move it forward into the actual public engagement process. It's not staff's determination as to whether or not this use is allowed or permitted or approved. Our role and responsibility is to make sure that it complies with the requirements as outlined by the ordinance. It's the elected officials that ultimately get to make the determination as to whether or not a rezoning of any sort is approved. So we go through, and that's that mailings within 300 feet. Neighborhood meetings are required as well, and then signs are posted on the property. A public hearing is held before the Plan Commission, and then another public hearing is also held before the Town Council. Like I said, a typical project, you're looking at about a year to complete this process. I wouldn't say this is a typical project. Right? The data center is going to be very unique, it's going to be very closely scrutinized, and we'll see as we go through the process. So we jokingly call this a very specific plan process. The reason we say that is because we do have a specific plan zoning category right now that is out there. Saguaro Bloom neighborhood is a specific plan, the Gladden Farms community is a specific plan. There's a number of communities, Dunbound, all of them are specific plan communities. It lays out certain zoning criteria that are required within the developments of those areas. In this case, we say it's a very specific plan because there is a very detailed requirement as far as the application, what has to accompany the application. They have to do a baseline noise study which shows noise contours and an exhibit that shows how noise currently exists on the proposed site and what it is anticipated to be with any future development. The intended source of the electric or power that will supply the project, and that has to be accompanied by a letter that says from the power provider that we have sufficient power to provide to this project. Assessment of a future energy need, that also would be covered in that letter. An estimated of the annual water consumption for the site, which down at we have a footnote here. The ordinance specifically states that the town of Marano's water, potable water, drinking water, will not be used to cool a data center. It explicitly states that, so what that leaves is we have an irrigation district in our community. The irrigation district could be a possible source for that. They could also bring water from other sources. It'd be quite a haul, but they could. But the council made it very clear. We're not using our drinkable water to support a data center. So they would have to, if they are using a water-cooled system, they would have to identify where that source is coming from, have a letter from that source that says, well, we're able to supply that water and all that. Now, I do have to clarify, from our water service standpoint, we will still provide water for the office use, the bathroom use, the drinking and that, as we would for any other development, but for the cooling system, we would not. And then anything that they are not able to comply with within the ordinance that is specifically stated, they have to call that out themselves, and they have to explain why they cannot meet the requirements of the ordinance. That way, it puts it front and center for when they come up before planning commission or mayor and council. We agree with everything except for this. It makes it a lot easier to scrutinize an application as to whether or not that is going to be an acceptable application to us or not.
Before I get into the building design standards, the only other thing I wanted to say on the noise attenuation is that there, in our ordinance, we do have decibel levels that a data center can't go over during the daytime and during the nighttime, depending upon what neighborhood they're in. So there are some standards, specific required standards that they have to meet with that noise when they're functional and operating as a data center. So the building design standards, like Jason said, what we were trying to avoid, we wanted to have, if there's going to be data centers in the town, we want them to look nice. We're trying to avoid a big, bright white building in the middle of the beautiful desert. So we wanted to try to work in some architectural elements to the building to make it look nicer, to have hopefully a nice campus feel to it. The use of a neutral color palette, avoiding high contrast colors, accent colors that complement and that any color changes that occur, they occur where there's building plane or recesses within the building. Colors shouldn't act as advertisements for whatever the company is that's occupying the data center, or billboards. They need to be complementary and sort of blend in with the natural environment as much as possible. You want building materials or exteriors to have materials that you have texture and character. We want windows and doors, and the placement of windows and doors. And they don't have to be actual windows, because it is the desert, they could be false windows. But this is really about appearance and what is this going to look like. We wanted to emphasize the pedestrian experience, again, kind of that campus feel is what we're trying to encourage. And then just that all buildings should include at least 5 of the architectural features that are listed there on the slide. This is another area where actually we probably went a little too far in our first drafts of the ordinance, where Jason and I thought we were architects, and we were told that we were not. And so
We vacated that degree.
yeah, we got that degree taken away. So we pulled back a little bit and allow a little bit more flexibility in these standards, but I think the ordinance still puts forward the idea that we want a nice building here. And then because the applicants would have to go through that specific plan process, the design, they'll have to explain and show it and have that in their application that goes to the commission, that goes to the council, and we'll get feedback from the appointed and elected officials about what we want to see.
So one of the areas we learned in here too, Jane's an intelligent, very intelligent woman, and it's very hard to catch her off guard or to find something that she doesn't know or can't quickly figure out. What was the one word you learned through all this?
Fenestration. I don't know if you guys know what fenestration is, but it is about the placement of windows and doors on the exterior of a building in such a way so that they are attractive, more or less.
Black screen. All right, so then the next thing we're talking about is site design. What we want to do is make sure we're taking a look at, a data center, where the equipment is placed, how it's shielded, how noise is muffled, things of that nature. For any data center that goes in, there is a setback requirement that they have to be 400 feet away from the property line of any adjacent property that is planned or zoned for residential land use. So there's a 400-foot separation that has to be applied there. For any other zoning that is other than residential or industrial, it's a 100-foot separation requirement. We got into the generators, and essentially I'm not going to go through all the details here, but the generators, one, they're only to be used for emergency purposes only. Any testing of the generators have to be done during the daytime hours. Should not be conducted at night or obviously on the weekends to minimize the disruption to the adjacent properties. And that we want the most energy efficient generator and emissions efficiency for the generator. It's a type.
Tier 4 or newer.
So we want the latest and greatest generator if it's going to be part of this project?
We spoke a little bit about water, but it's obviously very important, so we have a second slide about water. But as we noted, we will not provide any potable drinking water for the cooling system or similar systems within any data center that if one gets approved in the town of Marana. And as Jason noted, that was something that the council was very strong about when we took this original ordinance in May of last year at a study session. But we would provide water for office uses. And the use of the water, not that I'm a subject matter expert on this area, but there is what's called a closed loop system where it's primarily air cooled, but there's still some water usage in that regard as well, or an open loop system, which is primarily water cooled. So the data center developer will have to tell us what they plan to do and how they plan to do it when they come in and do the specific plan application. But as the previous slide said, we would require an estimate of the annual water consumption for the site, and that's for all uses on the site, whether it's for cooling or it's for office or whatever it is that they're going to be needing water for on the site. And then the intended source of water, which would likely be multiple sources. It's going to have to be multiple sources because for the cooling, we'll have to have something other than the town of Marana's water to do that. We saw this earlier when Mike was talking, and he explained it better than I can, but it's just a reminder, like the areas that, like we said, we don't have an application for a data center yet, but the areas where the irrigation district, their service area, what we're most likely looking at are some of the agricultural areas in the town of Marana. So farms being converted to this industrial use, which would ultimately save water.
All right, from the electric, and we covered this again earlier, but one of the things I wanted to do is Joe Sapkowski with TEP is here. I'm going to invite Joe to come up. I have a couple of questions just to kind of ask him from what we're hearing in the region and also what we heard in other areas. So I'll give you, you can take this one. Don't go too far.
Yeah.
So Joe, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hi, my name is Joe Salkowski. I'm the Senior Director of Communications and Public Affairs for Tucson Electric Power. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. That was good. Thanks, Joe. All right, Joe. So the first question I have for you is, can TEP provide the power needed for data centers?
Well, that's our job, is to figure that out when those applications come in. So right now, we've only committed to provide power for a single data center that's pending. It's the first phase of the one that's attracted a lot of attention, used to be known as Project Blue. For any additional data centers that come in and request service, we have to conduct studies that help us determine whether we can provide that power and then come up with a plan for doing so in a way that protects our other customers and makes sure that our reliability remains top tier. So we are the only provider of service in the areas that we serve, and so saying no isn't the thing we're able to do. We are able to say not yet, and that's a response we've been providing to a number of folks that have been coming in recent years. But that is our job, is to develop that plan.
So maybe along those lines, and you've heard us walk through what is our application process. I'm assuming if somebody wanted to build a data center, they don't just come into TEP and say, where can I plug in and go from there. What does it take? What is your process for a data center to be pitched to TEP?
So data center proposals go through a similar process that other commercial customers go through that have significant electric needs. It's just that it takes longer and is more extensive when you're using higher levels of power. So we will conduct a system study to determine whether the location they've selected, and they typically do come with a location, some land that they have an option on or a plan to develop. They'll ask us if we can provide a certain amount of energy at that location, and if not now, when might that be possible? And so we conduct a system study to make sure, first of all, that our distribution and transmission system, the poles and wires, are capable of carrying that energy. If not, we develop a plan for what upgrades would be needed, and if those upgrades are developed for the exclusive use of a new customer, we also develop a charge, a cost for that they would pay up front. And then when it comes to the energy, we look at our resource portfolio and determine what capacity we have available. And if we don't have that capacity, we develop a plan for meeting that need. And we don't always do that one by one as the requests come in. Every few years, we conduct a comprehensive update to our resource planning portfolio. It's an integrated resource plan that puts together a comprehensive idea of what we expect to see over the next 15 years. We've begun a new resource planning cycle just last month. And so this next resource plan is going to reflect some of the requests that have come in and develop a plan for developing those resources. And finally, in terms of, well, actually, I think I might be jumping ahead. I'll stop here.
Well, so one of the other questions, maybe, we asked a similar question last time is, the comments of, will a data center drive up my rates? Will the home buyers see an increased rate because of a data center coming in?
The short answer is no. The somewhat longer answer is that over the long term, customers like data centers actually help preserve affordability for other customers. And the reason for that is they generally use electricity at high levels around the clock. Data center is typically trying to use power at maximum capacity throughout the 24/7. And because of that, they are using our system during hours when most other customers aren't making much use of it. We have to build capacity up to a certain level to serve a residential customer, but a residential customer really only uses that for a couple hours a day, and that would have to be the hottest day of the year. And so a data center customer will make use of the rest of that system over the course of a year, and in the process of paying for that, will provide us with revenue that when it comes time to set new rates, that revenue is offset against the amount of revenue we're allowed to collect. That's what a regulator sets for us as a cap on the amount of revenue that we can collect. And they actually set a cap on our profits, but if we have more revenue from one large customer, that means there's less revenue that we are allowed to recover from everybody else. And so over time, a large customer with significant energy needs ends up having a beneficial impact on residential customer rates.
Good. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you joining us. Joe will also be available as we get into questions as well, so don't go too far.
I've got this cord.
Yeah. So with that, Terry, we're at the end of the update that we had, so I'll give you your mic back.
All right, thanks Jason, thanks Jane, thank you Joe, the Jays. Jane, Jason, and Joe. All right, so we did get a few questions here. Is there any requirement for data centers to use solar? The answer to that is no, there's no requirement
No,
for
we
that.
don't currently have that requirement in the ordinance.
Status of Black Bear Diner. I sent info to Terry Rosen. Yeah, I don't know. So this is one of those things about growth where we don't control who comes here. We recruit all the time restaurants to come here, and they come when they're ready. So we have looked into that, but no Black Bear Diner that I'm aware of. What is the plan for homeless on the loop? Okay, that's really growth, or data centers. We'll send that one out, we'll answer that one, follow up, we'll keep this to the data centers. Where is the water coming from to support the data centers? So it doesn't come from the town, so that water could come from the irrigation district, as was talked about. I think the water that goes onto say 1,000 acres of field, if you put data centers on there, it uses about half that amount of water, if they're gonna be water cooled. If they're not, they really don't use that much water. So the other thing that we found out in looking into this is one of the things, if somebody did come in and want to do water cooled, right, and they use the irrigation water to do that, we could actually benefit from that because we could get the recharge and we could take the water once it's discharged and recharge that and get water credits for it. What we're hearing more and more now, though, and I think you probably read it in the papers, is that more of them, especially in arid climates, are turning more to air-cooled as opposed to water-cooled. What kind of skill set employee is required for staffing the data centers? So they don't hire a lot of people to actually handle the computers. In a large data center of 1 million square feet, you may have 90 people that actually are the computer people. And I don't know what kind of degrees they have to have. I'm not really sure. I was told that the salaries for those people are around $90,000. I don't have any reason to doubt what they said, but that's what I was told. Will you have an open forum meeting where residents can have all, in the big square, all of their questions answered in a public forum? Well, I mean, that's what we're here for tonight, so if you have additional questions, you can write them down and we'll answer those questions for you. And the reason we do that, quite frankly, the reason we've done it this way is because when we have public meetings and people just shout out questions and we go around, we end up with all kinds of stuff. Like my neighbor doesn't bring in their trash can. What can you do about that? How come my neighbor gets to park this way on the road and I can't park that way? And the HOA told me this, and they painted their house green, and I don't like green. And so we get all kinds of questions like that. So that's why we have people write them down. It makes things go a little bit more smoothly. I think you can tell by the amount of time we spent here tonight that it would be a very long meeting. And
Can I just, on the issue of the jobs also,
Sure.
I think if we get an application, that would be something that would be fleshed out more through that application process. There would be economic information provided, and that would be one of the details that would need to be provided.
Great point, Jean, thank you. And this question is, newspaper quote 30% developed, 70% to be developed. Terry clarified, I'm having difficulty reading this. 70% isn't state land, only developable land, so what is to be developed? So state land can be developed, and I don't know what percentage of the land that we have here is state land. I don't have a number.
It's like mid-30s, 30%. Oh, land acreage wise?
Yeah.
35% of our.
35% of our open space is currently state land, according to Jason here. At some point, state land could sell that land and people could develop that land. All of the land along Tangerine right now, between essentially Dove Mountain and where there's development, Trico area, Trico Electric, that's all state land. On the south side of the road, on the north side of the road, that's all state land. We have a preserve up there, the Tortolita Preserve, that's 2,400 acres. That the town is preserving for open space. At some point, some of that other land, though, that currently belongs to the state could be developed. So are we going to develop all 70% that's still available to the town? No, I mean, that's just simply not going to happen. But exactly what that percentage could be, it's hard to say. All right, and I think that probably covers it. I think, just to kind of wrap things up here, Jane, Jason, kudos to them, kudos to the town for thinking in advance of what this could bring to our community and being prepared. And I think that's the key thing. If there's a takeaway for you, hopefully you see that the town put a lot of thought, energy, and effort into making sure that we are in the driver's seat when it comes to data centers. We're not getting caught flat-footed here. They're not going to be able to go near residential areas. The council is 100% in the driver's seat, able to say, okay, we think we might be okay with it based on what they're bringing to the table. We're going to move forward with this one at this location, right? So that's a possibility. At the end of the day, and this is something, the mayor told me, I don't know, a week or a couple of weeks ago maybe. At the end of the day, if a data center in the town is good for the town, then the town is going to do it. If a data center in our town is not good for our town, the town is not going to do it. I think that's what it boils down to. Is there a benefit there? And I think, Jane and I had this conversation like 2 years ago. Man, we don't want data centers. We got to figure out a way to keep them from coming here. And as we got into it, right, we began to see, there are some benefits. This is crucial, critical infrastructure, and it is necessary infrastructure. And do we have space in our community for it? Yeah, we probably do. Having the ability to be able to say where that might go and how it goes and how they run their operation and what it looks like and whether or not they can use our water or not. No, you can't, sorry, right? So having that kind of control, quite frankly, I think is a phenomenal position for the town to be able to be in, to evaluate it, to take the time to hear from our residents. Jason described for you very thoroughly what that process looks like, all of the opportunities for people to come and hear what it does, what it doesn't do, the impacts, the benefits, all of those kinds of things. So I want to just again thank you guys for coming tonight, because when we have these and nobody shows up, it's a little bit disheartening, I'll be honest with you. So to have 40-some people show up, really fantastic. If you have some, thank you. If you have other questions, I will stick around for a little bit if you want to ask us those questions.